channel. If you're new here, this is a series I'm doing called Beauty in the Scars. Today's episode is a heavy one, but it's also an honest one. And I just want to make a point to saying that I'm not speaking to everyone. I'm specifically speaking to the woman who looks fine on the outside, but is struggling and maybe barely getting by. So if that's you, I hope that you'll stick around. So this episode is going to pick up where the last one left off, which is I just brought my 4-pound baby home from the hospital after she spent a month there. I am still sick. I'm recovering from a really rough pregnancy and a really rough transverse C-section. I'm a single mom. I'm in and out of toxic interactions with the father of my baby. I'm dealing with family tension and broken trust. I have this itty bitty baby to care for. School has started back up. School actually started back up before she even got out of the hospital. So I was back in school while my baby was still in the hospital. That was awful. I'm going to class. I'm pumping milk. My supply is struggling. I'm exhausted. And honestly, I'm barely getting by at this point. In earlier episodes, I talked about how during college I drifted away from my faith. I was working on Sundays, I was tired, and I just wasn't focused on God at all. After my daughter was born, that was a shift for me. I knew that I wanted her to grow up in the church. So as soon as I got her home from the hospital, we went to church. That first week that we went to church was pretty scary. She was an itty bitty baby. I wasn't taking her anywhere at that time other than to church with me. I kept her with me the whole time, but just walking in there by myself with a newborn baby as a single mom, I was really scared, but I was welcomed with open arms. So sometimes I was exhausted and sometimes I was late, but we went to church and it didn't fix everything, but it did give me support. And there was an older woman in the church, um, someone who everyone loved, and she made it one of her missions to bring all the single moms together. Um, so that we could become friends and we could support each other. And that group became a huge part of my support system. And for the first time in a long time, I belonged somewhere. So this season wasn't about thriving. It was about healing. It was about survival. I was doing everything I could to hold it together. Most days that just meant I was showing up. I was not confident. I was not graceful, but I was there. And throughout all of this, my health was not stable. There were some stretches where it was okay, some where it wasn't. My kidney function was up and down. I was treating that with medication. I was really just focused on getting by day. Um, my health was just something I had to manage on top of everything else. So my goal was just to be stable. There was a lot of pressure during this season to keep going, pressure just to prove myself, self-imposed pressure. I was trying to protect people. I was trying to keep peace. I was trying to hold everything together while barely holding myself together. So if you have been there, I know how heavy that is. I did finish college. I got my bachelor's degree and walked in my graduation ceremony, and my 2-year-old daughter was there with me. And even though she didn't know what was going on, I did, and it meant a lot to me. It didn't fix everything, but it was a step moving forward and a sign to myself that I was going to be okay. When my daughter was a couple months old, I had moved back in with my parents. I needed help, and they knew that, and they asked me to move back in. Later, I moved out again shortly after graduating college, and I got my own apartment, and I was just really trying to make a life for the two of us. I graduated college in 2009, which was not a great time to graduate college. I was interning with the county, and I had applications in with several counties for jobs, but people were getting laid off and pink slips left and right. The housing market had crashed, and jobs were just disappearing. So it was not good timing. Um, Also, around this time, I was in and out of contact with my daughter's dad. He was never a consistent presence in her life. He came and went as he pleased. So all the responsibility was on me, although I had a lot of support from my family. I took a job eventually in retail just to get by. And when my daughter was 4 years old, I met the man who would become my first husband. He was really fun. He had a little boy, and for the first time, I could picture having that family that I felt like I was missing. At this point, friends that were my age didn't have kids, and my friends that had kids were all married, and they would do couple things, and I just felt really isolated. Not because anyone else was doing anything wrong, but it's just the season that I was in. And that's what I would try and tell myself, that this was just a season, and eventually I would be in a different season. So if you've ever wanted something just because it felt like you wouldn't be alone anymore, I understand that. So my first husband and I didn't live together before we were married. We were married by our pastor in the church. We went to premarital counseling through the church, and I felt like I checked all the boxes that were a pathway to a happy marriage. I felt like because I did everything right, I earned that, and so it was a given that it was going to be a good marriage. I was happy that I wasn't going to be a single mom anymore. And I believed everything was going to be stable and safe and God ordained. So we got engaged. 6 months later, we were married. It was a beautiful wedding. All our friends and family were there. It was Christ centered, and it felt like the beginning of the family that I hoped for. But literally on our honeymoon, things started to go bad. I started finding out things that he had hidden from me. He was drinking a lot, smoking a lot, which I had never known him to smoke and barely known him to drink. And he just was telling me, oh, it's just because I'm on vacation. I only do these things on vacation. But it didn't stop after the honeymoon. And I quickly realized that he hadn't been honest with me about a lot of things, and it didn't take long for things to start going downhill quickly. Um, I could do a whole video of red flags that I missed and signs that were there that I ignored, but that's a whole nother topic. Um, and of course, I was not perfect in the marriage either. That goes without saying. Um, about a year or so into our marriage, I had finally gotten a job using my degree. I was working for a large corporation in the financial services industry. I had a desk job, and I talked on the phone all day at work. Um, One night, I woke up with a really bad cramp in my leg, and I thought it was a Charlie horse. I tried to walk it off, it wouldn't go away. And it was just so painful. And I was thinking, like, I'm gonna have to go to the emergency room and get a muscle relaxer or something. And it went on for a long time. Um, but eventually it stopped, and my calf stayed really sore after that. So I was limping around. People at work were asking me what happened. And I'm like, I don't know. Um, maybe I pulled a muscle or something. But I brushed it off and told myself it was nothing, which is a pattern for me. Um, then a few days later, I started experiencing shortness of breath. I was getting out of breath just doing very basic things like taking a shower. And then it got to the point where I could hardly talk on the phone at work, which is literally what I did all day. But I would be massively out of breath just between words trying to talk to customers. Um, And then I started having some chest pains. I ignored it because that's what I do. But my sister said that enough is enough. You need to go to the emergency room. When you get home from work, I'm taking you to the emergency room. And so I called my doctor's office and talked to an advice nurse and told them, I'm having chest pain. I've been having this cramp in my leg. I can't talk without getting out of breath. And she said, yeah, you definitely need to come into the emergency room. We'll tell them that you're coming. So my sister takes me to the emergency room. I go through triage and I'm explaining to her the same thing I explained to the advice nurse, and she was like, "Oh, now your chest hurts too." And I said, "Yeah, I told the advice nurse that when I talked to them." I think she thought I was looking for medication. Um, she clearly did not believe me. I felt stupid, blown off. Like, why am I here? I'll give it that I was 28 years old, and you probably don't see a lot of 28-year-olds with like genuine heart issues coming into the ER. So I think she was probably jaded by her own past experiences. But it made me feel terrible. So they ran some tests. First, they said it's bronchitis, which didn't really make sense to me because I hadn't been sick at all. Um, as far as like cold and flu symptoms, anything like that. Then they said it was pneumonia. Again, didn't really make sense to me, but I never had pneumonia, so what do I know? And then they told me that I had pulmonary embolisms, um, which was scary. They admitted me to the hospital, but there was no rooms available, so I was still in the ER. They were doing like chest x-rays, CT scans, all those kinds of things, tons of blood work. My sister left for the night, and when she was leaving, she overheard the medical staff outside of my room talking about something to do with my heart and the right ventricle. And so my sister was freaking out, but she didn't tell me because she didn't want me to freak out. Later, they did tell me that in one of the tests, they saw that there was a shadow on my heart. They said it was probably nothing, but they needed to do an echocardiogram to be sure. So the echo tech came into my room. I'm still in the ER, not in a room yet. And she was quite cranky. I was under the impression that I probably threw off her schedule for the day. I was going to make her behind. I don't know. That's my assumption. But she was not happy to be in there. She was a little on the aggressive side. And then as she's completing this echocardiogram, her demeanor completely changed. She was so soft and so comforting and kind. And I remember thinking, I'm dying. I'm dying. The only reason she would be this nice to me is because I'm dying. So that was terrifying. Ultimately, I was told that there was a mass in my right ventricle and that it could either be a tumor, which could be benign or malignant, or that it was a blood clot. So the plan was to put me on blood thinners for 6 months. And then if it shrunk, it was a clot. And if it grew, it was a tumor. So I was going to be waiting for the next 6 months to know what was going on. I was in the hospital for a period of time. I was on oxygen and blood thinners. And at this point, I was diagnosed with antiphospholipid syndrome and told that I would be on blood thinners for the rest of my life. Likely that pain that was in my calf was a DVT, which is a common blood clot that people get in the legs, which may have broken off, and that's what caused the pulmonary embolism. So while I'm in this waiting period, I'm discharged from the hospital. I eventually worked my way off of the oxygen. But I'm not doing super great. I don't know what's going on with my heart. But my birthday was coming up and I wanted to go camping for my birthday. So I planned a camping trip with my parents, my daughter, my sister, and her boyfriend at the time, um, and his children, and my best friend and her nephew. So, and my husband, of course. So there was a big group of us to go camping together. Parts of that trip were great. I have great memories from it. It was really fun being up there with my family and my best friend. But the altitude was hard for me. I was really struggling. My breathing was struggling. Um, we had a birthday celebration for me. My best friend had brought a birthday cake for me. But my husband really wasn't recognizing that it was my birthday. And my dad asked me what my husband had got me for my birthday. And I had to answer him honestly that he hadn't gotten me anything. And he said, well, did he at least give you a card? No. Um, I tried not to make it seem like a big deal or like I cared, but it was the honest answer. And that sent my husband spiraling. He was so upset that I told my dad he didn't get me anything for my birthday. He ripped down the tent. He was just shoving the camping gear in the car, like not properly putting anything away, just shoving it in his car, and he left. He left me up in the mountains 2 hours from home with my family on my birthday. Um, I just was so checked out at that time. I just pretended like it didn't happen and went on finishing out this camping trip with my family that was still up there with me. Um, I had never told any of my family any of the issues that we were having or my friends. I kept it very private. I didn't want to disrespect my husband in that way. But now, because he did it in front of everyone that was important to me, it was out there. I couldn't hide it anymore. When I got home from that trip, he was gone. He had packed up some things and left. I didn't know where he was. So I was completely checked out at this time. I just start unpacking, cleaning, doing laundry. As I'm doing this, I start finding things, smoking materials, empty glass beer bottles. And as I find these, it just triggers me to like start searching. So I'm searching all over the house and I like finding empty beer bottles hidden everywhere. I pull out the couch and they just rolling across the laminate floors. I went out to the backyard and I looked in the recycling bin, which I didn't ever take the trash out, so I had never looked in the recycling bin. And it was full, full of glass beer bottles. Um, and that's when I realized that things were a lot worse than I knew, but also made certain things make a lot of sense. So I started reaching out to people in his life, specifically people that were recovering alcoholics that I thought would understand and be able to help him. I said he needs help. I sent them pictures of what I was finding. And instead of reaching out to him to see if he needed help, they started telling him that I was the problem, that I was being controlling, that I was overreacting, that he didn't have a problem. So that backfired on me, and that still blows my mind to this day. Um, I ended up telling him that I wanted him to either go to AA meetings or to move out until he was ready to go to AA meetings, to which his response was he would rather just get a divorce. Um, he didn't think he had any issues, and um, he just wanted to be done with the marriage. But he didn't leave. At this point, I had become the breadwinner, which was a shift from when we were first married. He couldn't afford where we lived without me. I could afford it without him, so it would have made more sense for him to leave. But he did not. He just said he wanted a divorce, but continued to live in the home. Um, I, at this time, just became a workaholic. I threw myself into working to avoid being at home. It was like I can go home and be miserable, or I can stay at work and make it more money. So that's what I did. I really checked out of my own life and pretended like everything was fine, marriage and health wise, because I didn't really know what else to do at the time. Um, I was hurt. I was confused. My faith was shaken because I felt like I had done certain things to achieve certain outcomes and it didn't work out that way. Um, but I also had no choice but to lean on God. I couldn't do this on my own understanding. So that's where we're going to leave this episode. He's told me that he wants a divorce, but he hasn't left the home. Things are really ugly when we are together. I still don't know what's going on with my heart. I'm still dealing with some of the residuals of the pulmonary embolism. I'm literally just chugging along, surviving day by day. And that was this season for me. So, just when I think that we've hit rock bottom, I get answers about my heart. And those are the kind of answers that changed everything. So, in the next episode, you're going to see that just when I think I've hit rock bottom, I finally get some answers about my heart. And that really changes everything. I'm still sick. My marriage is officially over. I make the decision to move out and start over. Not because I'm ready, but because I have no other choice. So, if this episode felt heavy, don't worry, it gets worse. If any of this resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking this video, or leaving a comment down below. I would really love to hear